Forex to come forward and introduce us to the guest speaker for the evening and give us a glimpse of the agenda for today's webinar. Amit
Thank
sir,
you.
over to you.
Thank you, Akansha. Good evening, everyone. Today we are here to discuss about Global FX Outlook 2021. It is indeed a great pleasure for me to introduce our today's speaker, Mr. Venkat Tyagarajan, well known as Tyaguji or Tiger of Forex in Forex market. Tyaguji is a postgraduate in economics. He's a veteran Forex dealer with more than 3 decades of experience. He was with Reliance Industry Limited as a senior vice president, heading their forex treasury before superannuating recently. He is currently the managing director of SYFX Treasury Foundation, not-for-profit company engaged in educational initiatives. On personal front, I will say that Tyaguji is an extremely simple and humble person who is always ready to impart knowledge. If you have any questions before we start, if you have any questions during the presentation, please type them in your chat box. We will take them at the end of the presentation. Now, without any further delay, we will turn the time over to Tyaguji to take this event ahead. Tyaguji, over to you.
Thanks, Amit.
Thank you.
Thanks for the introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed a pleasure and privilege for me to be talking about the Global FX Outlook 2021 in this forum. Actually, thanks everybody for making the time and coming out and then supporting Amit actually. Anyway, 2021 FX actually basically most of it actually what we will do, the first 30-40 minutes we will run through this presentation actually, and then we will have it as some sort of a dialogue for 20-25 minutes so that most of your doubts can be clarified. The thing is, what you are going to hear from me actually, it is not that run-of-the-mill consensus outlook that you would have otherwise heard from everybody for that matter. Possibly, I think you would have been tired of listening to people who are asking you to go dollar-rupee short and then go equity long and all that stuff, actually, painting a rosy picture. Of course, I am not going to paint that rosy picture, actually. That is actually, I am apologetic about it, but there is no other way. Actually, I am not here for popularity contest. I am here for telling what I feel it should be told. So, as you see, actually, possibly somebody was remarking about the title of the presentation, Great Expectations. Of course, if some of you are actually know about the classics, actually, it is a Charles Dickens novel, actually, Great Expectations, actually, almost similar thing as far as 2021 goes. One simple thumb rule I'll say, 2020, the second half of 2020 was all about expectations of a recovery, and 2021 is all about the reality. Let us put it like this. Well, let us put it very, very simply. Basically, all your thought process can be dovetailed into these two sentences, where 2020 second half as a was expectations of a recovery. 2021 is what is going to happen actually. Possibly it is going to reflect the reality. Of course, he was talking about my 3 decades of experience and all that stuff actually. You see, basically at the end of it, here in forex market, or for that matter, any market, actually, you are not known by the experience. Actually, you are known by the what is the money that you have made in the last trade. As simple as this. If you have made money in the last trade, you are a great guy. If you have not made money in the last trade, you are, that's it. You just see GameStop, what is going on actually. The Redditors actually, they are taking on some Melvin Capital kind of a hedge fund, and then they are proving themselves to be much, much greater than these guys actually. So at the end of it, experience is a actually knowledge is superfluous and experience is a handicap. Let me put it honestly. But of course, it is not that just because of that, we just cannot be talking about it. So first, what you would have otherwise heard about 2021. Well, 2021 actually, it is all rosy outlook. The growth is going to blast. and then possibly 11.5% actually IMF has printed, and India is going to grow at phenomenal rate, and the US is going to grow at about 5%, and the entire world is going to grow at about 5.4%. Fair enough, actually. This is what we had in the last week of December. And possibly as we get into January, actually, as the lockdowns continue in Europe and UK, people are just writing down the first two quarters for UK as well as Europe. And slowly, as the pandemic continues to be there in the US, even that the US growth outlook is also being revisited. So at the end of it, nothing is cast in stone. So basically, to expect that we are going to bounce back dramatically in the 2021 is actually too much to expect. The kind of output gap that we have created, actually, it will take a long time to close that output gap. If some of you actually who are inclined to believe me on economics, from 2008 to 2018, it took 10 years to close the global output gap that got created in 2008-9 recession. Irrespective of the fact that we went in big liquidity, yes, all these usual things were there. But a financial recession, but of course, it took 10 years for the output gap to close. And this pandemic recession, which has affected possibly every household in the country, across the world, forget about actually. Whether you live in China or whether you live in US or whether you live anywhere, actually, probably it has impacted you. Actually, you have to accept that. So basically, this output gap, it will take a long time to close. So to expect the output gap to close within 3 to 4 months, possibly the millennial generation, naturally they want quick solutions. But I think this is not a solution which will be very quick. So basically, to start with, what we are trying to say is, last year was about recovery. This year is about reality. That's also, we can say that it's a catch line. And then the output gap is not going to close so soon. That means the growth is going to take a long time to come. So number two, after these are all some of the basic truths which may not be digestible for the common man, basically because we have been fed on the fact that we are going to grow at dramatic space. Which we have possibly in the last 10 years also we have been told like that. Of course, not only India, actually, I'm not talking about India, for that matter, the entire world. Then actually the basic reason, of course, I will be talking about why this growth is not going to close. That is, output gap is not going to close immediately. The thing is, it is basically because of the debt. Basically, anything which has been created on account of debt, naturally, it takes a long time for the growth to come back. Actually, I will tell you one small, of course, as we go along, we'll be talking about it much more in detail. But to start with, I will just ask you one question. If money had been the only solution for all the growth-related problems, you tell me why Japan had not grown in the last 25 years? They have put mother of all your money there, actually. $8 trillion net to net, actually, both the government and the central bank, they have put money on the table, and $8 trillion, not a small amount. And 25 years, we have not seen, of course, they are still trying to grow out of recession, of course, in between 2 or 3 years, actually, 1 or 2 years, I can recall, where actually there were really some credible growth signals. So at the end of it, the debt, whenever, actually, basically, in our personal life or also the analogy easily work out. When I am having a debt, will I ever be thinking of growth, or will I be thinking of repaying the debt? As simple as. So naturally, whatever the revenues that come, whatever the money that may make, I am just going to repay the debt. But of course, I am a faithful, honest borrower. I am not. So basically, as long as the debt is there, you can be very sure that the growth is not going to come. That has been the case with Japan. That has been the case with Europe. You print any kind of money, you expand your balance sheet. Any country's central bank which has expanded the balance sheet has never seen growth. So we are being laid, actually possibly India, actually possibly it has started expanding this central bank's balance sheet. So basically we are going to have some sort of a very sluggish growth throughout the entire decade. Of course, I'm talking about the 10 years. I can put my money on the table and challenge anybody. Then inflation, it is a risk which is being underpriced. So basically what we are trying to say, the growth is going to be low and inflation is going to be high. And then real yields, naturally, it is going to be low. Whenever actually you take the history and go through the history of economic history, you can very well say that that is history repeats only in technical analysis and history doesn't repeat in economics. Not like that. Whatever the historic anecdotes, if you take, naturally, whenever the real yields have fallen, the productivity has also fallen. Actually, possibly some of you who are economically inclined, actually we can have a debate offline actually. So whenever you see real yields falling, the productivity also falls. So it is not that real yields falls immediately, investment picks up, immediately jobs are created. It never happens like that. Okay, so basically unemployment, yes, it is going to be structural in nature. It is going to be a structural in nature across the globe. It is not actually a country specific. So you are going to see some sort of a 7% unemployment as far as US is concerned. Everywhere actually, Eurozone, of course, after the furloughs in UK and Eurozone, you are going to see this unemployment being at elevated levels. And then fiscal dominance of monetary policy. This is one thing actually, of course, we will be talking about the modern monetary theory, fiscal dominance of monetary policy. Basically, all the monetary policy makers, they are going to be guided by the fiscal authorities. So basically, at the end of it, the central bank independence and all that, actually, it's all gone. Actually, possibly, we are not going to see those days once again. Actually. And then this investment banks, actually, possibly, they would have flooded you with research saying that dollar is going to die. In our lifetime, I will challenge you, dollar is never going to die. Dollar demise, it is not going to happen. Of course, after today's, actually, possibly the sell-off in Nifty and then this entire week sell-off in Nifty, I'm not talking that. This has been the case. So basically, dollar is going to not going to die. It is not going to be out of fashion. It is not going to be out of reserve currency at no point of time. Of course, we will be seeing that. So basically, this is the broad backdrop with which we are going to discuss. So if you just see the vaccine index I have put, actually, we have constructed a vaccine index. The vaccine index, actually, as of now, what people think, the pandemic is the only solution, only problem. If you find a solution to the pandemic, the entire problem is of the entire world is over. It is not the case, as simple as it is. You get the vaccine, you vaccinate the people, still the problem will continue. You just cannot say the vaccine is the miracle cure. Of course, if somebody sees this vaccine index and then possibly extrapolates on that, whatever the risk that you have taken, let it be Nifty or let it be S&P, let it be any equity, I think possibly it will reflect the sentiment. It is a universal sentiment that this vaccine index is what it gets reflected in the markets. So basically, people think vaccine is the miracle cure, which I am saying it is not the case, because there are plenty of problems beyond the vaccine, beyond the pandemic also. So of course, we talk about consensus views. Basically, of course, the consensus view is it's a walk apart. That is, it is a walk in the park with a strong growth and low inflation. Whereas my contention is it is not going to be a strong growth, low inflation era. It is going to be a reality, which is going to be a low growth with possibly a high inflation. Of course, there are some historic analogies that have been explained there. Basically, this is what is going to hurt people. We are talking about the last decade. Actually, even in India's context, actually, people are talking about 2008, let us say 2008 to 2018, or whatever, in whichever 2010 to 2020, or Japan's case actually was really last decade, now 25 years. So possibly the global economy is entering into some sort of a last decade in this possibly 2030. the debt overhang, which cripples the productivity growth in many sectors. I think possibly it creates a zombification of corporates, and possibly because of that, it is not going to actually possibly investment is not going to happen, and then possibly the productivity is not going to rise. A last decade doesn't mean it is a zero growth of 10 years of zero growth. And sluggish growth will be there. There is not going to be any significant uptick in the growth. So what is that actually basically 2021? What can be the themes? The only thing is actually we all agree that modern monetary theory, actually, of course, as I used to call it actually, is a magic money, where actually fiscal and monetary policy combined together, they print the money and then they send the money supply higher, thinking that inflation will not happen. This is a situation where inflation could happen or might happen or possibly it is happening. Of course, we'll see. So as you go ahead, actually the secular stagnation in growth is a realistic. It is not pessimistic. It is not optimistic. The realism is in between both the things. It is secular stagnation in growth, and then secular stagnation in growth, and that is what we saw in 2010 to 2020 across the globe. There are some few pockets which grew, but otherwise you never saw the kind of growth that the world had between 2002 to 2010, probably the first decade. So high probability of a stagflation. That's a basic thing. Now, of course, if some of you who are inclined to bet on the market based on your theories, you just see actually any market can be brought within these four quadrants. A disinflationary boost, disinflationary boom, inflationary boom, and inflationary bust. The global economy circles around these four quadrants normally. If you can correctly point out where exactly we are going to lie in the next 6 months, possibly all your bets, let it be currency, let it be equities, let it be commodities, everything will be going right. We all agree. All the markets are synchronized. There is nothing like that. There's some market going up, some market going down, and there is a disconnect between the market, disconnect within the markets, of course, disconnect between the markets and the economy. That is broader thing. But if you can correctly put where exactly we are now and where exactly the economy is going to go, then naturally half the battle is won. So this is where we are. Possibly the market thinks it is a inflationary boom that is going to happen, whereas it could be a inflationary bust that is awaiting us in the second half of 2021. So that is a big risk. So basically, this is actually, broadly speaking, there are two cycles. Actually, earlier days, actually, probably some of you actually who have been trading for 20, 25 years, we all know, we all have to understand what is the business cycle. What's business cycle? If you know the business cycle, you can very well trade whatever that you want to do. But right now, there are two cycles. One is the business cycle, another is the financial cycle. So even if the business cycle, even in the current context, even if you are going through a 7.7% recession, your equity markets are hitting historic highs. Every day it's printing historic highs, all-time highs. Basically because the business cycle and the financial cycle, the intersection of both the cycles, naturally you make a decision based on the business cycle and financial cycle. Naturally you get it right. That's a point actually. So basically, not like olden days where we used to think about only business cycle and take decisions. But right now, business cycle as well as financial cycle, both cycles we have to take into account. And broadly speaking, see, every 10 years, the dynamics of the entire world changes. The thing is, again, 1980s started actually probably the first year of the decade. Of course, we can have a debate whether 20 is the first decade or 21 is the first year of the decade. Whatever it is. The 80s, it started with inflation. And the entire decade, it went into inflation. And every time, actually, it was an inflationary spiral and then fighting, Volcker hiking the rates, and then 87 sell-off. So 80s to 90s, it went like that. 90s, German unification, end of Cold War, liberalization across the world, and globalization started. So across the world, that trend continued, 90s. And 2000, the tech bubble burst and entry of China into WTO, and then possibly the entire Eastern European labor coming into Europe, as well as China possibly becoming a factory of the world. Actually some sort of a disinflationary forces, and then that was the first spark in growth in 2010, and then it set the ball rolling for a disinflationary force. And then 2010 we had a global financial crisis, and every day we woke up to see, okay, everybody is safe. That is the kind of feeling that we had actually. Okay, JP Morgan is safe, Deutsche is safe, everybody is safe, because we are all thinking about the financial institutions. Now, 2020 has started with the, of course, 2020 has started with the pandemic. Not to say that the entire 10 years we are going to talk about the pandemic. Maybe it can be coincidental, but every decade, that actually possibly the first year of the decade sets the ball rolling for a particular theme, and that particular theme continues throughout the decade. It could have been a coincidental thing in the last 50 years. Okay, fair enough. But at the end of it, mind you, this pandemic is not going to go away soon. It is not going to go away soon. It is going to possibly, yeah, exactly 1 year back, and I told you that there is going to be a pandemic, all of you would have told me that you are a fool. Yes. So when I say this pandemic, possibly this pandemic or the fear mindset of a pandemic, I think it is going to continue to stay with us for quite a long time. That's the basic. Okay, fair enough. These are all some of this thing. 167 times in 300 days they were cut and then committed so and so money and all that stuff. So we have been talking about the growth being lower actually. Everybody says, boss, we have come out of this kind of a mess earlier. Actually, I was just writing about actually basically if you go, of course, it do not have to be my presentation. You can even Google it and see. In 2009, two messages were repeated by everybody. In this crisis, measures are different because governments are investing in the recovery by increasing public spending. The funds from stimulus plans will strengthen. Have we not had this before? Possibly 2020 also the same kind of story is being dished out. So the thing is, whenever you print money and get into a debt and then finance a recovery, the entire history of the world shows that you have got into another problem immediately. I don't know what kind of problem will haunt, but there will be another problem, another crisis, which will hit. So possibly what has happened, 2009, we got out of the entire global financial crisis, and 2010, immediately the Eurozone crisis happened. 2012, possibly the Eurozone crisis was getting solved because of Draghi action, nothing more than that. So this extend and pretend, actually, basically, that is what actually possibly the inflation, unemployment, these are all some of the lofty goals of the central banks of previous era. Now the central banks have got only two things. One is extend and another is pretend as if you are doing something. So basically what is that is going to happen about the growth? One thing is growth. It is not that growth is going to be absent. Growth is going to be there in some sectors here and there. It is going to be there. There is no doubt about it. Actually, it's some sort of a K recovery that is going to happen in all the sectors for that matter. Actually, not only growth. Everything in the planet, it is not going to have a uniform trajectory. It is all going to travel through a K trajectory. Some sectors doing up brilliantly and some sectors doing depressingly. So so basically what we are trying to say, some sort of a distress wave is likely. So don't believe that vaccination is going to be the miracle cure that is going to push the global growth higher. It's not going to happen. Possibly April to June, that quarter, you will have a bump up impact. And all of you who have been following the markets, actually, what has happened in the Q3 in Europe? Everybody told actually Europe is going to grow out of trouble like anything actually, and that they are committing so much money. And then now Q1 growth is getting revised lower. And German government is slashing the growth forecast further. And Q2 is going to be much worse. And if things are going to, basically Q3, basically because of the base effect, it is going to be much worse. So at the end of it, 2021 is going to be a lost year as far as Europe is concerned. So there is going to be some sort of a distress wave, which is going to be there. I'm not sure whether the pandemic will extend, possible, but more than the pandemic, I think the inbuilt, when you are financing the growth through a debt, you just cannot grow. That's a basic point actually, which I have been making. So another one thing actually, some of you actually, the consumption, the global middle class, actually, some of you know the expansion of the global middle class is one reason why global growth has been very strong. Of course, we all can appreciate actually, some of you who have been above 40 or 50 in the audience, you can easily appreciate how the things were looking like possibly 30 years back and 30 years now. Actually, you must be talking to your son or daughter every day saying that those times we had a Dianora or a solitaire TV. Now, these times you have this kind of TV. Yeah, definitely. So basically, the expansion of the middle class is a must for any growth to be well anchored. Unfortunately, the expansion of the middle class has come to a halt. So when of course, you can go on talking, actually, India is a demography and then a middle class, all those things, fair enough. But at the end of it, the expansion of the middle class with which you used to associate in the entire thinking process, that is being threatened. So the middle class is not going to expand. So basically to that extent, actually consumption is going to take a beating. Of course, the S&P 500, of course, this is a double dip recession. Actually, basically, if you just take, of course, people say that there is no precedent. Absolutely not. Everything in this world is predestined and it has a precedent. So basically, May 78 to Jan 83, that is what is going to be replicated. If my graph works very well, actually, we are looking at a double dip recession for sure. And of course, this is some sort of a slide actually, which should not have been coming here. One thumb rule I will say, actually, possibly every one of you just have it. S&P 500 dividend yield, when it is above 10-year US yield, then US equities will go up, 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 up. There is no doubt about it. When US 10-year is above S&P 500 dividend yield, be careful. The money will go into bonds. Very, very simple thing. You just see this graph. It tells you the whole story, actually. Of course, we can very well say, wow, there is no connect between bond and equity. We are living in a modern world. Yes, fair enough. Modern world or ancient world, actually, basically, at the end of it, money means money. As simple as this. So, you just have this kind of other thing. So, basically, when you see 10-year US going higher, S&P 500 with this kind of a dividend yield, possibly the dividend yield should also go higher. If this kind of dividend yield, it cannot get higher. That's a basic point. So that is about the equities. So equities also, we see a dip, and growth also, possibly the growth is not, the consensus view, we are taking it with a pinch of salt. And then we are talking about the global inflation expectation. Inflation expectations. Mind you, the inflation is going to rock the world. I actually basically I don't mind somebody criticizing me or somebody saying actually this guy is too pessimistic. Fair enough. The only thing is the inflation is going to be, so basically I can go wrong and you can go wrong. There is no problem. The only problem is actually If I go wrong with your money and if you go wrong with my money, then problem starts. Hopefully we won't. But the only thing is the inflation is going to be a big, big problem actually. Now actually central banks actually they think actually they can ride through basically because the velocity of money is not there. That is why I can print any kind of money. I can put 6 lakh crore in repo, but no inflation will happen. It cannot be like that. So basically the inflationary expectations actually it is driving. And then another thing I'll just show you was the money supply. Money supply and the inflation rates actually. Sorry. Money supply and inflation. You just see actually at the end of it, whatever you see, inflation is at the end of it, yeah, monetary phenomenon. You can go on denying that, but it has normally happened like that. So when you have a money supply of 25% in US, can you believe all the money that is circulating right now in US, 50% of the money has been printed in the year 2020. If that means naturally the inflation is around the corner. When will happen? Actually, probably second half 2021. You can be very sure that it is going to be an inflationary spiral. Because most of us, actually, especially the millennials, they don't know what the inflation is all about. Actually, only I think the old guys know what inflation is all about. Actually, millennials even don't know the spelling of inflation because they are not used to it. Actually, that recency bias, that is a basic problem as far as the trading is concerned. What you see, what you have seen in the last 10 years, you think the next 10 years it will be like that. It is never like that. Anyway, the money supply is a problem as far as inflation is concerned. And of course, global liquidity versus world GDP and world commodity markets versus Chinese central bank liquidity. You put any graph, it just shows that inflation is going to be around the corner actually. Of course, if I take, of course, all this inflationary bust, this deflationary bust, all those things, if I take, and possibly, of course, if I combine technicals and fundamentals and then put together a graph, when I can see inflation on a confirmed basis. Yesterday, Paul was also saying he cannot see inflation. Okay, fair enough. But possibly from, let's say, April to May 2021, maybe April, May 2021 onwards, actually, you are going to see a significantly inflationary era in the second half 2021. So that is the base case view. And then I talked about the debt. Why actually 130% of the GDP, global GDP, 272 trillion as of 2020, we have the global debt is there. Yeah, of course, we talked about it. So when a government debt as a percentage of GDP rises above 65%, economic growth is severely impacted. Becomes very acute at 90%. In India's case, actually, we are approaching 90%. That is why I am saying about this is not that I am writing my theory. Actually, this is what the history tells. 90% public debt, if you have, you cannot have growth. It has happened. Across the world, it has happened. Across the Latin American country. So either a EM or a DM, you take any country. So each additional dollar of debt in 1980 generated a rise in GDP to the extent of 60%, 60 cents. But right now, it is not happening. Maybe actually 27 cents is in 2019. That is each dollar of debt you are generating, you could generate a debt of, generate a GDP of 60 cents. Now you are generating a GDP of only 27 cents. So basically, this is the graph actually, especially in the non-financial sector debt. You just see the perpendicular line that is standing in 2020. Possibly people are not watching this. Okay, fair enough. There will be a day when, just like a GameStop of today, there will be a day when the entire market starts watching this debt. So as the debt piles up, the growth is going to be lower. And we are piling up debt in a big big time. So naturally, the global growth is going to be lower. That's a basic. And then this is actually dollar outlook. Actually, everybody, I think that is 11 out of 10 guys in the markets have written about how dollar is going to be sold out, how nobody likes dollar. Yes, fair enough. But you just see what is the kind of year-on-year percentage change in the dollars and the recession. If you think global, when simple thumb rule, when you see global growth is going to be lower, then dollar is going to be stronger. As simple as this. There is no theory in the world which disputes that. Actually, I am presenting you this graph which says that. So, dollar demise is not in our lifetime. That is actually basically I am saying, basically because when debt is denominated in dollars, of course we talked about the debt, how debt is, that is the debt pile is there, and then we are talking about the reserve currency. Actually, at no point of time, dollar is not going to be a reserve currency. You just see every time when something happened, QE1, QE2, Operation Twist, QE3, and rate hikes, COVID, every time people say, boss, dollar is going to be sold out. Immediately, the entire crowd sells dollar, and then dollar bounces back. This has been happening in the last 20 years, rather 13 years. When you have seen the last big dollar sell-off, it has happened in 2003 to 2007, when, of course, 2002 to 2007, when dollar rupee also came along from 49.02 to 39.70. That is a 10 rupee down move that happened between 2002 to 2007, when the entire global growth was very strong. And of course, some of you actually, basically youngsters, cable was trading at 2.17. Can you believe? Actually, Diwali of 2007, I remember. So, and we hit a low of 39.17. From there, actually, we bought back, November 2007. So, at the end of it, only when global growth is strong, you are going to see a weak dollar. When the global growth is going to be weak, as we have argued so far, naturally, there is not going to be a case for a weaker dollar at any point of time. And then, of course, if I have a policy uncertainty, then naturally, whenever the global economic policy uncertainty has been there, basically uncertain economic outlook has been there, dollar has been strong. If you feel that 2021 is going to be full of certainties, then go and sell dollars, as simple as this. And then, of course, people are telling about the death of dollar and all that stuff. It is not going to happen, basically, because 61.3% of the entire global reserves, they have been locked up in dollar. It cannot get away like that. And of course, so we just, and then another thing about another one idea is this dollar China. Dollar China, it has been going down, and then people think actually the entire problem is over, and possibly China is the one country which has got real yield positive. Whereas India, can you believe the real yields are negative in India? That is most acute. That is second most acute in second least in the entire world. Actually, Argentina is ahead of us actually. So, because of the higher real yields, possibly actually dollar China has been going down in this era, and of course the Cold War is going to continue. There is no better person than Henry Kissinger to talk about China. Actually, he was saying, well, this Cold War is going to continue the entire 10 years. It is just going to be the Cold War of the USSR, USA of pre-1989. Possibly here, actually, it was being fought for military supremacy. Here it is being fought for the technological supremacy. Technological supremacy. So basically, what has happened? You just tell me, in Japan has lost so the technological age. Europe, you tell me one technology company which has done well. When US, you have got a couple of course, the FANG. Forget about the FANG. At least you can name some 10 companies which have made a remarkable impact on our day-to-day life across the world, not only in US. Similar is the case with China. But talk about Europe. Europe continues to be in manufacturing. Manufacturing is no more in fashion. That's a basic thing. Technology is what is going to be the theme in the, of course, next decade. So a country which is technologically supreme is not going to have a weaker currency. So it is not going to have a lower growth. So that is why US and China, they are going to have some sort of a stronger currencies and some sort of a stronger growth. Whereas rest of the world, we are not going to have some sort of a stronger growth. That's a basic. And of course, we are talking about, of course, how immediately people will talk about China and India comparison and all that. Actually, basically, whatever that happens in China, it happens in China and possibly the North Asia. At no point of time, actually, India is going to be impacted to that extent, actually. Basically, at the end of it, correlating Indian dollar rupee with the dollar China, I think it's all actually basically some jobless NDF traders activity. At the end of it, actually, there is absolutely nothing that impacts India on account of something that is happening in China. Actually. That is what actually the entire stats showed you. Who is getting impacted big time? Actually, you can see the entire table. Of course, EM yields, actually, it is going to go higher. Actually. That's a basic thing. EM yields are going to go higher. A bearish EM currency cycle is not over. It is just getting delayed. The only thing is, unless the world grows, EM cannot be stronger. As simple as this. So EM has to stay weak if the world growth is going to be subpar. So EM yields is going to up. If I talk about oil, possibly oil actually once again I think getting into I think the 50s is well protected, and I actually at no point in time we are going to see anything. Even if the world growth is going to be much lower, you are not going to basically because the investments have not happened in the last 5 years. So naturally, the oil is going to be underpinned. Possibly, let's say, I think once again, actually, we are going to test 65.65. That is a 2020 high. You just have a watch there. If you break there, then all the hell break loose. But it is not a consensus. Oil is not going to go anywhere. Where the entire market was saying, even at 35, people were saying that it cannot go past 40. At 40, it cannot go past 50. Now at 50, it cannot go past 60. This is actually possibly the head mentality. Of course, my feel is actually we are going to go higher in the oil actually. So of course, dollar rupee, actually everybody talks about dollar rupee and everybody talks about the FX reserves, and then why are they accruing reserves like that? See, whenever you are talking about the Indian reserves, actually you have to think of two things actually. One is, don't go with the conventional metrics that is being applied in the rest of the world, where they calculate the reserves in terms of number of imports or number of exports and all that stuff. Because our reserves, they have not accrued on account of current account surplus. That means our reserves, they have not accrued on account of our efficiencies. Our reserves have accrued on account of the arbitrage opportunities that we have provided to the entire world. So our reserves have accrued on account of the capital inflows that have come in. So basically, the capital inflows that are getting parked. So net IIP, what is that net IIP? It is not the normal IIP that you hear. This is international investment position, where actually what foreigners owe to us and what we owe to the foreigners. That actually, that both the things we are taking together, and then some of the liabilities and assets we take, and right now, as we talk, it could be closer to $1 trillion. So that means $1 trillion is the amount of money that the foreigners have deployed in India. So naturally, at every point of time, this $1 trillion can get out. So what should be my resource adequacy? At least I should have 60 to 65% of this net IIP with me to safeguard any flight of capital at any time. So that is why the Indian FX reserves actually we are seeing actually, wow, it's miraculous. $570, $700, $575 and all that. Fair enough. But the only thing is, at the end of it, you are having a liability of $1 trillion and you are having a reserves of $575 billion. So even at the worst of scenario in 2012-13, we never went below 50%. And then possibly at the best levels, actually we had 67, 68%. So at every point of time, you can have some sort of a thumb rule. FX reserves, actually, they will take it to the level of at least 70% of net IIP. So it's a good thing, actually. Basically, at the end of it, you are holding reserves to the extent of 70% of net IIP. Naturally, it makes sense. So to say that IA reserves cost, yes, fair enough, everything costs. Because just because we have asked the foreigners to come inside and then they have come inside, naturally we are paying the price for it. So at no point I think that reserves are adequate or anything like that. By any standard, it is not, basically, because at the end of it, one point we have to know, the entire world, there is no country which has built such large reserves on account of capital account surplus. India is the only country which has built reserves on account of capital account surplus. Forget about the current account surplus of 1 or 2 quarters here and there. Forget about it. Otherwise, we have never had any current account surplus to talk about. So, of course, these rules actually you can easily rule. Markets tend to return to the mean over time. That's the first rule. And then 9. These are all the 2 main rules I will tell you. When all the experts and forecasts agree, something else is going to happen. So, what is that you are telling now? The thing is, bubbles suddenly do exist in weight swaps on market, and naturally it is going to end in tears. If you have a foot on the gas, make sure the other foot is on the brakes. So, the summing up. So basically, that number 1, the global growth is going to be on a weak footing, and inflation is going to be actually underpriced right now. Unemployment is going to be structurally going to be there for the next 10 years. Let me put it honestly. And then possibly, then the dollar is going to stay relatively strong. Actually, at no point in time you are going to see a weaker dollar and all, because at the end of it, if you are going to sell dollar, what you will own? Absolutely next to nothing. Europe, Japan, who else? Nobody else. So possibly the 2 growth pockets, China and US. That's the thing. So with that, actually, we will wrap up the presentation, and then I am up for interaction. I think let us have a interaction. Any questions?
Right. Thank you, Thyaguji. Thank you. There are a number of questions which has been sent by the viewers.
Yeah.
Let me ask one by one all of them. Sir, one of the client is asking a question. They have taken a term loan in euro close to 80 level, and euro have moved close to 90 levels. Is there any chance that euro will come down towards 85 level by the year end? Thyaguji?
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, basically, of course, the one thing is this thing actually basically, see, at the end of it, actually, euro you can think of actually possibly euro is going to stay weak actually. Of course, every other guy in the street is saying that euro is going to gain strong. My feel is actually possibly you have a stop loss around 25, 1.25, and then possibly I think you can ride that down move actually. At the end of it, actually, dollar is, of course, my entire the presentation is talking about dollar being strong. If the dollar being strong and euro being weak, and possibly 1.17 and euro and the dollar will be close to 74.5. I think that is where you will get.
Okay. Okay. So the next question is, what is the outlook on gold, sir, for the next for 2021?
See, it's not going to make a big. Actually, gold is not going to make a big impact. Actually, I think possibly it is going to over here. Actually, see, basically at the end of it, it is neither an inflation hedge nor a disinflation hedge. Actually, right now, it is actually basically some of the old school will say, boss, when the inflation is going to be there, then gold has to go higher. Actually. It will not. See, there are so many substitutes which have come. There's so many, let us say a Bitcoin or a Ripple or a GameStop. So all these things actually basically it is replacing that gold's value actually. You just see actually today we had a statistics which said 35% drop in India's gold imports. Of course, you can say that all the women were locked down actually. Probably that is the reason why 35% drop in the gold imports in India. But my feel is actually it is not going to go anywhere. Actually. Not actually basically at the end, at no point of time, of course, people are saying about 3,000, 4,000 and all that stuff. It's not going to go anywhere actually. Maybe I think it is going to stay here actually. 17.5, 20.5 max.
Okay, right. Sir, someone is asking a question that what are your thoughts regarding possible hedge against inflation? How can you hedge against the inflation? Where do you invest if you want to hedge against the inflation? Because gold is down, equity is down, then where do you invest?
Tough. Honestly tough. There is no answer. Because real yields actually basically at the end of it, this entire generation, we are seeing the real yields for down in India for the first time. Not actually basically, of course, I didn't have that graph. I will, if you compare the real yields, the day I was comparing the real yields across the world, there is the average inflation of 2020. If you take Argentina is the lowest, and second lowest in the entire world is India.
Right.
By normal conventional mechanics, a lower real yield should have depreciated the currency like anything. Any EM currency depreciates when lower real yield. That is why actually Raghuram Rajan's time actually he was very careful to keep a real yield. That is why actually no FII investment bond. Why these guys are so much fascinated with your equities, but they are not fascinated with Indian bonds. Why? Basically because the real yields. Real yields, it's killing. Actually, honestly speaking, that is why actually savings. Can you believe that is of course that is what is called savings paradox. Savings paradox is what actually people all think actually basically especially central banks think that when you cut the rates, the consumption will go higher. Unfortunately, when you cut the rates, the savings goes higher. Precautionary savings in India has gone much higher. US savings has hit 10%. In my entire career, I have never seen US savings at 10%. India actually basically that day finance ministry was saying 1 lakh crore they have got in NSEs. And then you just see the kind of deposit growth that has been happening across the banking industry, whereas the credit growth is not happening. By cutting the rates, what do you want to achieve? You want to achieve credit growth so that people borrow and then velocity of money increases and then the employment gets created. These are all the conventional thinking. Now, in the modern world, as you cut the rates further, the savings goes up further. But there is no other choice.
Right. So the next question is, what is the level of Nifty you can see in 2021? Close to 10,000 or close to 15,000?
It's all recency bias, just because we are used to this 10,000 and 15,000 levels, we immediately draw a band and then say that it is going to stay here. You don't know where it is going to splash around. Actually, honestly, you put a gun on my head and ask. Actually, I will say it will be lower than 12,430.
Right.
Because considering that you are not going to grow, it is only that April to June quarter you are going to grow. Whatever the pent up demand that you are seeing right now, actually, possibly you will get exhausted at one particular point, and then 95% of the households, they don't have the kind of income that they had in 2019. That's the basic point.
Right. Right, sir. One exporter is asking that they have exposure in AUD INR and they have hedged 60% of the total exposure, close to 51, with an average rate of 51. What is the outlook of AUD INR for next 6 months?
See, Aussie rupee actually, whether it has moved, nothing actually. Basically, it normally stays in the band. Actually, basically, at the end of it, actually, Aussie has become a risk animal, and then dollar rupee as it is actually. The kind of actually basically the carry that you see in rupee, 6 months, whether I can beat the carry? Yes, possibly actually. Dollar rupee, yes, possibly. But Aussie rupee, I don't think Aussie rupee is going to stay almost stable actually. I'm not in the camp where I will say Aussie rupee is going to go much higher. But you cannot beat the carry in Aussie rupee.
Right. Sir, what is the effect of so much of money floating in the market? That is a question asked by one of the clients. If there is an excess of money into the system, what is the impact of that?
We talked about it. 25% money supply in US, and I told you 50% of the money that is circulated in US right now is what is being printed in year 2020, and it is not the case. It is the same case with India actually. 6 lakhs crores. That is a kind of liquidity that has been floating in the system since let's say March. So basically, this is the kind of money that is circulating in the system, and to expect that there is not going to be any inflation, it's actually missing the wood for the trees.
Right. Sir, one of the client is asking that we are a net importer, and what will be the view on USD INR for next 6 months?
It is not going to go lower actually. See, basically, it has been repeatedly reiterated. Actually, it is not going to go lower. It's some sort of a 73, 75 kind of a range. Actually, it is going to continue to stay. And the
Right.
global dollar is going to stay strong. And on top of it, actually, whatever we discussed so far, actually, where we think actually possibly dollar is going to be very, very strong, then naturally, actually, the rupee cannot get strong. Actually, that's a basic point. If that be the case, the only thing is the carry. Carry actually, see, to some extent, actually, the carry is higher at the lower level. Yes. At the end of it, actually, making some sort of a systematic hedge over the next few months, that makes sense actually. That's the thing actually. Carry basically, what I'm trying to say is maybe 72.80 the carry is much higher. 73.20 actually possibly 40 paisa you lost on the spot, whereas maybe 10 to 15 paisa you will gain on the forward, possibly.
Right. So you are emphasizing that systematic hedging is important.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, don't take any risk. Basically, at the end of it, unless you are really sure of your own future. I honestly speaking, I am not sure of my own future. If you are sure of your own future, you leave it open.
Right. So that is a very valid point said by you, sir, that you have to be you should be hedging systematically.
Yeah, systematic hedging, number one. And don't think of the carry as some sort of a money that you have to make actually. Carry is something like a taxi fare actually. Suddenly, if there is a fire in the building, what do? You get down and then you find a taxi, and then you won't ask you won't wait for him to put the meter. You can get in and then immediately you will run. If
Right.
tomorrow dollar rupee prints a high of 74 half, will you be looking at where is October? Will you be asking with the bank whether the quarter paisas and half paisas? Absolutely not. We will all run.
Right.
So at any point of time, see, basically we are living in a world. See, some Redditors joined together and then they took the market, and then you see what has happened to the equity market. Actually, it is not vulnerable. It has got Powell, it has got Ellen, it has got everybody around it. Some 20 Redditors, they have taken the market for a ride. So anything can happen. Let us be very conscious of that fact.
Sir, one of the client is asking that as you have said that Indian real yield is negative. Indian real yield is negative. Basically, it means that we are earning lesser than the inflation. Because of the inflation, we are not earning much. So, and he's saying that he has a parents who is going to retire next year, and he wants to invest. Because basically they were investing in FDs. Now, where they should invest because the real yield is coming down.
Yeah.
So that is the main challenge what they are facing, sir.
Yeah, everybody faces. The one thing actually basically before anybody touches that 7.15, the RBI bonds, that is the only way out. At least you don't have a counterparty risk, and you have only thing is it gets locked for 7 years. So basically at the end of it, if somebody is retiring, actually probably
that is the best way to. Okay.
That is the only alternative, because of course you are locking it for 7 years. That is a problem.
Right. Someone is asking a question that what is your two main expectation from the budget? Two main expectation from Indian budget, which is going to be present in next week.
Boss, actually, basically, we are all graduated here. We are all now beyond monsoons. We are all beyond budgets, and we watch only S&P 500, and we watch how the global markets trade, and then the Indian markets trade. At any point of time, actually, whether the Indian markets actually reflect the Indian economy, no. Why should Indian budget make any big contribution to Indian economy? Absolutely nothing. Actually, honestly speaking, nothing. Nothing. It won't impact you actually. Basically, that's the basic thing I am saying actually. It won't impact you. No, basically it is getting you are impacted by the global forces, not anymore by the domestic forces. That's a basic point.
Right. So someone is asking a question: what will be the impact of newly elected Biden with India's ties? India's trade relationships, sir. Indian-US trade relationship.
See, for them actually, for us actually, US makes a big difference. Actually, there's no doubt about it. For them actually, India is also one among the, let us say, the 20 odd countries actually with. So as far as trade relationship goes, actually, I think that they will be much more bothered about China rather than anything else. See, at the end of it, there is a bipartisan. Actually, either you be a Democrat or a Republican, the only thing that unifies you is your animosity towards China. Actually, that is what actually Trump has achieved in the last 4 years. Actually, it is just like actually the kind of sentiment the Indians have for Pakistan. Whether X party rules, Y party rules, you cannot be friendly with Pakistan. That is the kind of message. So for them, actually, China has become a common enemy. Actually, the only thing is they are battling for the technological supremacy for the next 10 years, not something. That is why Huawei, 5G, it all makes count. That is why actually Europe doesn't come under. Europe is not a big enemy of US actually. Of course, both of them are competing against each other in so many fields. So for rest of the countries except China, I don't think it is going to make a big impact. US is going to make a big impactful change in the whatever the status quo that prevails right now. If you are talking about the currency manipulation and all that stuff, I don't think currency manipulation that will be taken very seriously by Biden administration, because I don't think actually they are going to be See, normally Democrats actually they are least bothered about all these things actually.
Right. Sir, the next question is RBI following China's footprint of increasing FX reserve and attracting FDI when, according to you, US will start tapering? Two questions.
No, no. As far as India, India, there is a big difference between what India is doing and what China has done actually. China's $3 trillion are made up of current account surplus. See, when you are having a current account surplus, that means you are more efficient than the rest of the world. That is why actually the rest of the world has bought goods or services from you.
Right.
So naturally, you can have a reserves. So those reserves are on account of current account surplus. That is your efficiency. Whereas in our case, this is basically the capital account flows that are coming. We call it FDI, FII, ECB, anything. But all this money, it has come to lodge here. Possibly, at the best chance, actually, they will get out. Or possibly, they may not get out for a long time also. Over. But at the end of it, so you just think of a true situation. One China situation where he is guaranteed a revenue. That is, you take your own personal example. If you have a revenue to service your debt, that is naturally no problem. Actually, you just go on increasing the reserve. There is no in our case, the capital accounts you don't know when it will stop. We don't know. Nobody knows. We can be confident that FDI will come in, that will come in, this will come in. Fair enough. At some point in time, suddenly everything will stop and then $20 billion goes out. What happens? So you have to be prepared for it. So basically, India building reserves and China building reserves are two different concepts. Number one. Number two, normalization. It is not going to happen across the world in the next 5 to 7 years. It never happens. Any monetary or fiscal policy that has been used for, let us say, any growth related crisis, it never gets rolled back. Ellen tried her level best. She couldn't do it. And then one of the other this thing, she was delaying it, and Powell tried doing it, and then then political pressure, and 2019 he went back on that, and then they couldn't do it. When they could not have done in 2015 to 2020 or 2015 to 2019, how you can expect them to do in the pandemic years? Absolutely not. Normalization is not going to happen across the world for next 2 to 3 years, even India included.
So the next question is, because of Brexit, what is the outlook for GBP USD for the next 6 months?
See, at the end of it, actually, sterling, immediately you watch 3750, 3745, 3750 actually. As long as it is below 3750, I expect this to come down actually. That's a basic thing actually. So 6 months is a too long a period actually, honestly speaking. Let us not be actually, I am not a heroic to suggest that it is going to go to 1.2 or 1.5. Somebody was asking 10,000, 15,000, something like that, 1.2 or 1.5.
Right.
But my feel is actually 1.3750 you watch. If 3750 doesn't break, 3750 doesn't break, let's say on a closing basis, let us forget it. I feel we should get to 1.3 also.
Okay. Okay.
If 1.3750 breaks, it can go higher. Actually, at the end of it, fundamentals are of no use these days. Of course, honestly, everybody accepts, you know. If you know the fundamentals, actually, you will not buy sterling at all.
Right.
The entire country is locked down, and the entire country is having a Brexit-related problem, and the budget is actually they are running a fiscal deficit, and it can go into negative rates. come 4th February, they will have the negative rates also. Who knows? And then everybody thinks dollar is weak.
Right.
So basically, fundamentals are of no use in the thing. Only thing is, it asserts with a long delay. Actually, that's all.
So the last question is, someone is asking a question, whether it is right to take funding in for dollar or whether we should take funding in INR. Because your outlook is on the depreciating side. So whether we should take
Listen, you just see the kind of forward premiums. You see the kind of forward premiums. Anybody in its senses will borrow in dollars to hedge it.
not possible.
It is a stupidity. Nothing more than that. You know, honestly speaking, if you take a PCFC and then hedge it in forward market, it is nothing but 5. Let's say 485. Let us put it 485. You just work out the cost. Whether it makes any sense? Absolutely no sense. Now banks are opening the doors and then they are giving you rupees. Let us say at 3% and 3.55, they are giving 14-day repo with the reverse repo with the central bank. They will easily give you at 4%.
Right.
Why we should go to dollar? Actually, basically dollar funding or rupee funding, this is an age-old question. Unless you think actually dollar is going to die. Okay, fair enough. You can take a dollar funding and then keep it open and then make some money out of it. But whether you just ask yourself whether my business is punting or my business is elsewhere. That's all.
Right.
So basically, it doesn't make any sense for you to borrow in dollar and hedge it in the current circumstances.
So basically, you're suggesting that we should take INR loan.
Yeah, you should take a INR loan. Actually, basically, that's a basic thing. Actually, you just think of a situation. If somebody is giving you at 4% or 4.5%, whether you have to pay here 4.8% and then LIBOR plus 100 basis points you are borrowing, naturally is going to cost you, no? Unless you are going to punt on the dollar, actually.
Right.
Punting the dollar, you have 101 things to do. You can open a currency future account and then you can short dollar and then you can make money on it. Why you should unnecessarily involve your business in that?
Right. 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 So I think we have answered all the questions, sir. Let me hand it over to Akansha for a thank you note, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Akansha, over to you.
Yes, sir. So it looks like that we have covered most of the questions. I would like to thank Tyagranjan sir for such an insightful and enlightening session. It was indeed a great experience in learning from you, sir. I would also like to take a moment to thank all our attendees who have stayed live throughout and being such an enthusiast. We hope you have enjoyed it. We will also share a recording of this event for your reference. Please feel free to pass this along to your colleagues who would be interested. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate for you being there. Thank you for joining us today, and we will love to see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you,
so much,
Tyaguji.
sir.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Right. Thank you. Jai Hind.